Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet and assemble the Winter Market Bag, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description or go to your favorite search engine and simply type in Moogly Winter Market Bag and the pattern should pop right up. To make today's pattern, we'll be using a USL 8mm crochet hook and less than 1 skein of Bernat Blanket Perfect Phasing. I used the dark blue colorway, but of course you can use whichever colorway you like. Stitch markers, as well as a yarn needle and scissors, your standard crochet supplies, are always helpful. Let's take a closer look at the finished Winter Market Bag. The Winter Market Bag that you can see here really features the ombre or gradient effect that you'll find in Bernat Blanket Perfect Phasing. Here is the pink colorway. I believe this one's actually called Fuchsia. And as you can see, the darkest colors in the center fading to just the palest of shaded whites here on the outside. And this bag takes advantage of that. We start making squares from the middle and work our way out. Then, when it's time to make the snowflake dangle, we work from the outside to get that wider bit of yarn there. So if you prefer, you can use a different version of Bernat Blanket. You just won't have the gradient colorway here. But it's also a great stash buster, so you can use whichever colors you like. Now, as I mentioned, we make lots of squares. You can see here the darkest ones I made are at the bottom, and we work our way out. After making 17 squares, they're all simply sewn together just with the whip stitch, and then the handles and a little bit of edging are added around the top. Then there's this optional snowflake dangle you can see right here. It just loops right onto the bag, so if it's not winter time and it's not the holidays, you can take this portion right off. This is also a really cute ornament that you could hang right on your tree. So it's a little bit of a 2-in-1. Here's what the bag looks like from behind, kind of a view without the dangle as well. And you can see how the different colors of that gradient of the yarn really create sort of a patchwork effect. Now, I haven't lined my bag. I wanted to make sure to show you guys here how it looks as is, but you absolutely could line this bag if desired. It's a really lovely size, perfect for all your everyday essentials and taking with you on all your winter market shopping days. So let's go ahead and get started making our own winter market bag. Now, before we get started making our 17 squares, you can see here in the pattern how I've laid out the squares as I made them. I started at the beginning of the skein or the cake with the darkest color, and that was number 1 all the way to 17. And it lightened up quite a bit by the time we got to 17. So as you make your squares, try and lay them out in this specific order, or you can join them as you go. I'll show you how the join comes together here after we make one of our squares together. So let's go ahead and do that now. Here I've got the darkest or inside end of the skein or the cake of yarn, so that's where I'm going to start crocheting. And all of our 17 squares are exactly the same. We start round 1 with a magic circle. So we're going to come in a few inches on our yarn, and then I'm going to wrap the yarn over my non-hook forefinger twice towards me, just like a yarn over. So once and twice. Then I insert my hook under both of those loops, catch the loop that's furthest back, pull it just under that edge, yarn over, and pull through. I do have a separate tutorial on the magic ring on my channel if you'd prefer. Then our first stitch is a chainless starting double crochet worked right into that ring. So I'm going to pull that loop up to the height of a double crochet, secure the top of the loop with my finger on the hook so it won't go anywhere, yarn over with the loop itself, insert my hook into that ring, make sure I go under the ring and that tail end, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Then I finish my double crochet, yarn over, pull through, release that top loop, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops. Now, this can be a little tricky. I can go ahead and take my time, there we go, and get that one made. Now, I like to do that. It's as opposed to doing a chain 3 for your double crochet start. If you prefer a chain 3 for your first double crochet or a different double crochet substitute, you can absolutely do that as well. Now, we're going to work 2 more double crochets into the ring. So I yarn over, go into that ring, and again, make sure that tail end goes over my hook as well. It's that tail end that we pull on at the end that really closes everything up, but it means it has to be enclosed in each stitch. So I've got my chainless starting double crochet, 1 double crochet. I need another right back in that ring. So now we have a total of 3 double crochets. Then I'm going to chain 2 and work 3 double crochets into the ring 3 times. So we chain 2, 1, 2, and work 3 double crochets into the ring. Again, every time I want to make sure that I catch that tail end in that stitch as well. So there's 1, 2, and 3. So that's 1 repeat, and then we do it again. Chain 2, 1, 2, straighten out my yarn a little bit there, and then 3 double crochets into the ring. Oop, my yarn got twisted. There we go. There's the ring. Make sure we've got that tail end there. 1, 2, and 3. So now we need to do that repeat one more time. Chain 2 and work 3 double crochets into that ring. 1, 2, and 3. Sometimes that tail really wants to join the party, but we just want to enclose it and kind of keep it hanging there in back as best we can. So now you can see it kind of looks like the start of a standard granny square, but we are going to finish it up not with a chain 2 and join, but rather with a chain 1. And then we're going to use a half double crochet in the top of that first double crochet. So either the chainless starting double crochet or the top of the chain 3 or whatever you used for that very first double crochet stitch. We just put a half double crochet right in there. And you can see when we use a half double crochet as a join like that, now our hook is in the middle of this chain space. So that chain 1 and half double crochet are kind of going to act as our chain 2 here, but now we get to start in the middle of that space. One last thing to do here at the end of round 1, we can go ahead and take that tail end and pull on it. And you can see how that closes up the center really nice and tight. Now, when we go to weave in this first end, with our yarn needle, we want to make sure and go back and forth in different directions around that magic ring. That's what's going to hold it closed. If we were to weave in that end in only one direction, it could pull out. So you can weave it a little bit one way, but then make sure you come back the other direction before you're done. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and let that hang out now and move on to round 2. For round 2, we start with a chain 1 for our turning chain, and then we half double crochet in that same chain 2 space. There we go. And then we work a half double crochet and a front post double crochet in the next stitch. So half double crochet, we're going to go under those top 2 loops just as we normally do. There's that. But then we're going to front post double crochet around that same stitch. So we yarn over. Now we find the post of that stitch itself. Come from the front around that post. Could be a chain 3, could be the chainless starting double crochet, whatever you did there. And work off our double crochet as just like that. So then we are going to back post double crochet around the next stitch. So that's the center one of that set of 3. So we yarn over. Now we come from behind. There we go. Right around that post. Pop our hook out to the back of our fabric. Yarn over. Very carefully pull that loop up and through. And then finish that double crochet. And then in the next stitch, we're going to front post double crochet and half double crochet in that one to sort of bookend or mirror what we did here. So for the next one, first we want to do the front post double crochet. So we yarn over, we come from the front around that post, pull the yarn up and around, finish that double crochet. And then we want to half double crochet right in the top. So this is a little tricky. I like to yarn over and then just kind of use my finger to hold that loop on while I find the top of that last double crochet that we just went around. There we go. And there's that half double crochet right there. After that, we are going to half double crochet in the chain 2 space. And then chain 2, 1, 2, and begin again. Half double crochet in the chain 2 space. We've got another set of 3 double crochets here. So for the first one, we half double crochet in the top. And then front post double crochet around the post of that same stitch. like so. Then back post double crochet around the next. So yarn over and then come from behind. Yarn over, carefully pull that loop through. That's usually the hardest part of back post double crochet. Then we can finish that double crochet. Then for the last one of that set of 3, we want to do the front post double crochet first. So we yarn over, go around that post, and then very carefully half double crochet in the top of that same stitch. Then of course we're back at that next chain 2 space, so we half double crochet in the chain 2 space, chain 2, and begin again. We're going to do that same series here on all 4 sides of our block. And you can see just how much texture this is creating in our square. So after that chain 2, we go start our repeat again, half double crochet in that chain 2 space. Then we work a half double crochet in the first of those 3 double crochets there, front post double crochet around the same one, back post double crochet around the next, front post double crochet around the third, got a little fuzzy there, there we go, and then half double crochet in that same stitch. Like I say, after you work that post in there, sometimes it can be hard to find. If you're having a lot of trouble, just scooch that base of that post stitch down a little bit, give yourself a little bit more room there to get right in the top of that stitch. Then of course we need to finish up our repeat there with a half double crochet in that chain 2 space and then chain 2. And then we do that all again for the last side. So I'll see you as we finish up round 2. So we finish up our repeat with a half double crochet in the chain 2 space and a chain 2. Now we're ready to break our yarn. But if you know me, you know I love avoiding having extra ends to weave in. So we want to take a moment and not just cut off what we need to weave in our ends, but let's go ahead and cut off what we need to sew this square to the squares around it. That way we avoid having to cut extra pieces of yarn to use for our seaming. So I would recommend that you cut approximately 18 inches or so for your final tail. Again, you don't have to break out a measuring tape or anything. You can just kind of eyeball it here. That looks like about a foot. That looks like about 6 inches. And that's where I'm going to go ahead and cut the yarn. If you're worried about having too little, you can definitely cut it a little bit longer. There is extra yarn left from the skein at the end of this pattern. So if you prefer to do 24 inches, that's absolutely fine. It'll actually give you a little bit more variety in the colors of your squares. Now, you can see after I haven't joined or anything, I've just got that chain 2. I went ahead and cut my yarn. I'm going to pull up on that end with my hook. This is where I want to grab my yarn needle. Find the end of my yarn here. With Bernat Blanket, I like to kind of fold it over my needle and pinch it a little bit. I find it a little easier to get it in there. It is a thick yarn, so you want to use one of your larger yarn needles or tapestry needles. And then we're simply going to finish this off with a seamless join. I'm going to take this tapestry needle or yarn needle, find that first half double crochet I made of this round, go under those top 2 loops. I'm going to pull this through. I'm going to go right back into that last chain. Get that centered there. There we go. And just give that a nice tight tug. So now it is joined, but I'm not going to weave in this end. I'm going to pull my yarn needle off and just let it sit and use it when I sew my ends together, or rather when I sew my squares together. Now this end, the internal end, I would go ahead and weave in the ends, the inside end, if you will, on all your squares before you join them together. Or if you really want to, you can leave them for the end, but at least make sure that your magic circle in the center is nice and tight. Then you can set those 17 squares aside, and let's talk about assembly. Now, this schematic on the pattern shows how the different squares are assembled. We laid out our squares as I showed you earlier, 1 through 17, and now I've got them numbered. So square 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc., all the way through 17. This dotted line represents the fold at the bottom of our bag. So let's go ahead and work through this arrangement together. I don't have another 17 squares made, but I do have all of these little squares right here. So when you assemble your squares, when you go to sew them together, you can use this long tail and literally just whip stitch those ends together. Whip stitching, we take our yarn, we go through 2 layers of yarn, just all the way through. If you prefer a different seaming method, you could absolutely do that. You could crochet them together. You could use the mattress stitch, whatever you like to do. But for now, let's go ahead and just talk about how those actually go together here. So I've got square number 1. That would be the first one I made, the darkest one. That one starts right in the middle. Then we do square number 2. Let me make some space here. Square number 2 there, and square number 3 goes there. Now we can't really sew any of these together yet. We're just sort of laying these out. The first one that we can actually sew on to the others would be square 4 right here. So square 4, we can actually start our sewing. And again, I simply whip stitched them together. But 4, you can attach here to the side of square 1 and to the bottom, or whatever side makes you happy. They're all the same. There's no, upside or downside to any of the squares of square 2 right there. So we've still got it laid out. Square 4 can attach to 1 and 2. Square 5, we're going to come in on this side. So let me grab a little bit more of my washi tape here. Square 5 can attach right to the side of 1, opposite of 4, and then make sure 3 is on the bottom of 5 right there. Let me get that one straightened out a little bit so we can fold it all up here. There we go. So there's square 3. So then we need square 6 is next, and that one comes in right here, right next to square 2, and above square 1. So you would go ahead and take your ends and sew on square 6. Then square 7, we come from underneath, right here, and sew that to the bottom of row 1, and of course to the side here of row 3, which really wants to be crooked on me. There we go. Nice thing about the crochet, right? It's a little more flexible than the paper here. Square 8 comes in up here. We're just working our way right through the schematic on the pattern. Oop. Get that attached. Square 8 attaches above square 5 into the side of square 6. And then, of course, a 9 comes down here. And if you did not follow the specific, color ombre gradient sequence, if you're using different colors of Bernat Blanket, you don't need to assemble them in this particular order. If you're using up odds and ends, if you've got different colors, or even if you're using a solid color, then you just want to make sure you get this shape right here. But if you want to keep that ombre effect, that patchwork effect with our squares, then this is the way you would want to assemble them. So this is the first 9. We've just made a really nice block here. 10, we're going to come in here on the side of 5. You can see right there on our schematic, same thing. We're going to do the same thing with our crocheted squares. So there's 10. And then 11 right there is on the opposite side. It's the other side of square 4. Square 12, we come underneath square 7. We build it out this way to sort of keep our darker colors at the bottom as it lightens up towards the top of the bag. Square 13, put above square 6. Let me get those scissors out of the way so I stop bumping them every time I grab a new color or a new square here. Then square 14, look closely here. It's below square 11 and to the left of square 9. Like so. Square 15, opposite to the side of square 8. Let's get that lined up there. And of course, it's right above square 10, so we want to sew it there as well. We want to sew all our seams. Next is square 16, so we put that one right here. You can see right there it is on our schematic. And it really does help if you have them all laid out, or if you want to join them, sew them together as you go. Just make sure you follow the same color order here. Of course, attach it on both sides there. And then finally, square 17 is going to be right up here to the right of square 13. So So if you prefer to lay them all out and attach them with stitch markers before you sew them together, you absolutely could do that. If you are using, sort of random different colors to mix up rather than the gradient scheme, I'd recommend that you do that so you can make sure you get a color layout that you like. But for us, for now, this is how we create what's right here, of course, by sewing our squares together. Now, you see that dotted line? We know that's our fold line. So right across there, our original 3, 1, 2, and 3. On our pattern, you can see what we've made right here. Here it is in paper. Here it is with the squares all joined together. So now we're going to fold it right across 1, 2, and 3. Now, with our fabric, obviously it doesn't fold, but that is what creates the bottom of our bag right there. So when we fold that up, you can see here's the front and the back of our bag. And here you can see we've got square 2 and square 13 are going to come together like this. So we want the side of 13 to connect to the top of 2. There, I couldn't find the end of my tape there. There we go. So 13, the side of 13 goes to the top of square 2. And this is spelled out in the instructions as well. There we are. Oh, doesn't want to stick. Still a little faster than sewing though. There we go. Then the left side of 2 connects to the top of 11. So the left side of block 2, there's the top of 11. So we put those together. Again, just sewing it in. That's why it's great to leave all those really long ends for the end, unfortunately, to weave in, but then you can keep using them to attach your squares here as you go. So we have 2 attached to 11. Then we come to the other side. The bottom of 10 attaches to 3. So here's 10. The bottom of 10 attaches to the side of 3, just like what we did on the other side here. So we can put those together. There we go. Get a little bit more tape. The bottom of 3 attaches to the side of 12. We bring those together as well. So if you're really getting lost on your squares, if it's just not making sense, try using those stitch markers to add a little label with the numbers. That may help you as well. Now you can see it is starting to make that bag shape. So last thing we want to do here, last couple things, we want to close up the sides a little bit. So you can see it's got a bag shape right now, but it's a really wide open bag. So 2 more things. We want to do the top of 13 to 11. If you hold it out here, you can see how that logically makes sense. These 2 want to come together to close up our bag a little bit along the side. And then the same thing on the other side. We've got the side of 10 attaching to the bottom of 12, like so. There we go. So now, paper, of course, not nearly as flexible as fabric. You can see that is how we've made the shape. And I pull this back out here. You can see right there. These are the ones that come up and attach on the sides. Right now, all this is handle. So if I put my hand over that, you can see this has made that shape. It's open here. This would be square 16. This would be square 14. Square 15 and square 17. So you can see how those early numbers put the dark colors at the bottom of our bag, and it gets lighter as we go up to the top. So after those are all sewn together, then it's time to do the handles and optionally create our snowflake dangle. Now, where you want to begin your top edging and handles is completely up to you in terms of which side of your bag. Just doesn't really matter at all. You just go ahead and pick one. But we want to start by looking for what would be the chain 2 space at the top of one of these squares at the top of the bag. So you can see right there is the chain 2 space at the corner of this square right here. This is where we go ahead and join right there with a single crochet, and then we place a stitch marker right in that single crochet. That's going to come in handy later. Then we single crochet 7 stitches down, Do a little single crochet 2 together here where these squares come together at the side, and single crochet back up this side, single crochet in the chain 2 space, place a stitch marker in that one right there. Then go ahead and repeat that around. 7 stitches down the side, single crochet 2 together whenever you get to one of those valleys, 7 stitches up this side, single crochet in that chain 2 space and place a stitch marker in it, back down the other side all the way around. At the end of that round, you can go ahead and join to that first single crochet with a slip stitch. So you'll be joining to that first marked stitch. Now, the reason we have those stitches marked is to help us make our handles. So since we started in this stitch, you can see right here, there's the single crochet. Then I chained 20. This gave me the length of my handle. Now you can absolutely chain more stitches if you'd like for a longer handle. Again, there is extra yarn left over at the end of the pattern. So you can make these handles as short as you'd like, although I wouldn't go a whole lot shorter than maybe 10, but you can make them longer if you'd prefer a shoulder strap, absolutely whatever length you like. I went with 20. I think this is a good length, especially for getting to sort of over my arm. Then after we chain 20, we skip all these stitches in between and single crochet in that next marked stitch. That's why we have stitch markers at the top of each of those points, if you will, of our squares. So we chain 20, single crochet in that next marked stitch, single crochet on over till we get to the next marked stitch, chain 20, skip over to the next one. We skip all those stitches in between and keep going around until we get right back to that very first one. Finally, we single crochet in each chain and slip stitch around. You can see those right here. Here's the chains at the bottom. We want to single crochet in each chain, not the chain space, but each chain and in each stitch around just to completely firm up those handles. If we worked into the chain space, then our stitches could slide around on that chain and they wouldn't be nicely distributed like you see right here. So if you've chained more stitches to make a longer handle, then you would want to just single crochet in however many stitches you did for your handles. So we just work our way around, create those handles very simply with single crochet, and all that's left is the optional snowflake dangle. Now for maximum contrast with our snowflake dangle, I pulled from the outside of the skein to make that, leaving sort of that center section of leftover yarn unused. Now, that said, because it's hard to see against a white background, I am going to use the darker color right now, just for demonstration purposes. But if you're making it for your bag, I'd recommend you start at the outside end so that you get that really nice white color. So now let's go ahead and make our snowflake dangle in a nice dark pink. We're going to start round 1 again by making a magic circle. So I'll go over twice over my finger towards me, insert my hook under both of those loops, pull that back one just forward a little bit, yarn over and pull through. Then I want to make that chainless starting double crochet. Again, if you prefer, you can chain 3 or work whatever double crochet substitute you prefer. Get that, don't want to drop that last loop there. There we go. There it is. Now my magic circle is sort of held open by that stitch since we've got a nice thick yarn. And then I'm going to chain 1 and work a double crochet in the ring, followed by a chain 1. So our repeat is double crochet and then chain 1, and we want to do that 5 times after that initial. So we'll have a total of 6 double crochets and 6 chain 1s in between. So we've got a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, chain 1. Pull up a little bit more yarn here from my cake. There we go. Again, each stitch we need to go into that ring, make sure we catch that tail end as well. So there's double crochet, chain 1, right back into the ring, double crochet, chain 1, keep our tail end cooperating there, double crochet, chain 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 so far, so I know I need one more set. Double crochet and chain 1. Needed a little bit more yarn. There we go. Let me pull up a little bit more here before we finish round 1. We're going to finish it with a join, a slip stitch join to the top of that first double crochet. So whether that's the chainless starting double crochet or chain 3, whatever you used. There we go. So you can see now we've got double crochets with a chain 1 in between each one. Now it wants to bowl up on me right now, but that's because I haven't pulled down on that tail yet to close up the center. Once I do that, it lays nice and flat. So that's what it should look like for the snowflake dangle after round 1. For round 2, we start with a chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to slip stitch in the same double crochet that we joined to, the top of that same double crochet there. So we just put a slip stitch right there. There we go. Then we are going to slip stitch in the next chain space. So we just go right into that chain space and work a slip stitch. There we go. Then we begin our repeat that we do 4 times. Slip stitch into the top of the next double crochet, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then slip stitch in that same double crochet. So that's the first one of the repeat. Let's do that again. Slip stitch in the next chain space, slip stitch in the next double crochet, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch in the top of that same double crochet, and we actually finish our repeat with the slip stitch into the chain space. Do it again. Slip stitch into the top of the next double crochet, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch in the top of the same double crochet, and slip stitch into the chain 1 space. We did our initial one, and then we do the repeat 4 times. We've got 1, 2, 3 made. We've got 1 more. So we go into the next double crochet with a slip stitch, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch in that same double crochet right there, and then slip stitch into the chain 1 space. So that is our 4 repeats in the brackets if you're following along with the written instructions. Finally, we work a slip stitch in the next double crochet. You'll see that's the only one not worked. We had 6 there in row 1 or round 1. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of those loops. Got 1 more double crochet there. So we're going to slip stitch right in the top of it, like so. And then we're going to chain 12. And this is our long loop for attaching our snowflake to our bag. You can see that is our loop right here, the long one. So again, if you need that loop longer, if you're making this dangle by itself for another purpose, you can make this loop as long or as short as you'd like it to be. For now, I'm going to go ahead and stick with 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, need some more yarn here. 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. There we are. Then we are going to slip stitch in the 3rd chain made. So not the 3rd one from the hook, but the 3rd chain made. So we want to go all the way back down here. 1, 2, 3. I like to slip stitch into the back hump, but with this fuzzy yarn, it's really hard to see what part of the stitch you're going into anyway. So whatever makes you comfy is fine. Just like so. There we are. Then we chain 1 and slip stitch in that same double crochet right there, all the way back down at the base. Now, mine got twisted. I can tell because my tail end is hanging out in the front. So that happens a lot when our stuff's hanging. You can go ahead and just sort of let that dangle for a minute. And then when it's straightened out, slip stitch in that first one. And then we have our finished guy here. We just need to finish it up completely by breaking our yarn. Again, we want to leave a little bit of length here. Pull up on our hook. There we go. Get that yarn needle back out. Let's see, find the right size here. There we go. Try and find a slightly bigger one this time for this big, thick yarn. And then we take that end of our yarn, and then we simply seamless join to the first slip stitch of the round. So you can just go right in there, pull that down, send that yarn end right back, and then we can weave in those ends. So after weaving our ends, we will have made our snowflake dangle. And you can simply attach it to whatever you like, for instance, a pretty little tote bag, by sending the snowflake itself through the remaining of that chain 9 loop there. So I would just go ahead and pull it up to my bag and make sure to pull that snowflake right through that chain 9 loop. There we go. Of course, my ends are trying to get in there to join the fun right now, but there we go. You can see it just attaches just like that. So you can pull it right back off, make them in dozens of different colors, make these for really fun and fuzzy crochet ornaments or gift toppers, whatever you like. And that's how to crochet the winter market bag with its optional snowflake dangle. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you'll give this free crochet pattern a try. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.